Hello! It's time for my April wrap-up, and I'm doing something a little different this time. I am putting my book reviews in with the wrap-up. So if you want to find out what I thought about the books that I read in April, then keep watching. I just finished reading Allegiant by Veronica Roth, and oh my goodness, total 5-star book for me. Now, if you haven't read the first 2 books, I wouldn't recommend watching any more of this video, but if you have, then I can tell you that at the end of book 2, they watched a video saying that there was pretty much life and other places outside of their city. I don't know. It's just so good. Of course, you know they're going to try to find out how to find these people outside of the city because they're curious people. So that's pretty much what this book is about. Like, trying to figure out what's going on with the video they watched and trying to figure out how to save their town. Now, there were a couple of parts in here that I really enjoyed, and I'm going to read them for you. They don't really spoil any of the story, but if you don't want to know anything that's going on in the book, and it doesn't say anything that's going on with the book, it just tells a little about the world of the Divergent series. The first one is about the different factions. It says Dauntless, brave but cruel. The Erudite, intelligent but vain. The Amity, peaceful but passive. The Candor, honest but inconsiderate. The Abnegation, selfless but stifling. And I just love that. It really gives you a good comparison of the different factions and kind of what went wrong between the different factions. The other line in the book that I just loved was, I fell in love with him, but I don't just stay with him by default as if there's no one else available to me. I stay with him because I choose to. Every day that I wake up, every day that we fight or lie to each other or disappoint each other, I choose him over and over again, and he chooses me. Now, I don't want to spoil this for anybody, so I'm not going to say anything else, but this book has so much action in it and so much feelings in it, so many feelings. I kind of saw the ending coming before I read it, just because that's who the characters are, and I wouldn't expect it any other way. I can understand how a lot of people got spoiled for it. If anybody had told me the ending, oh my goodness, I would have been so angry because that would spoil it so bad. I don't have words. It's just so good. And I wish that I had the book 4 that has the novellas in it, or short stories. Yes, it says they're short stories, but I wish I had that. I don't know what else to say. It's so good. And I know a lot of people were very upset with this book, but I'm not. I thought it was written very well, and I thought it was written to match the characters, so I had no issues with this book at all. There are things that I kind of wish were done differently, but if they were done differently, it wouldn't have been following who the characters were, so it would have disappointed me in the fact that it didn't follow who the characters were. So definitely 5 out of 5-star book for me. The whole series is 5 out of 5 stars for me. And if I get the book of short stories 4, then I will read that and do a review on it as well, because this is an amazing series. Inside Out and Back Again by Thanha Lai. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Now, I got this on Book Outlet. I didn't realize that this was written in verse. There's not very much on each page, so it was a really fast read. It took me a little while to get into it because I don't usually care for reading books in verse, but I actually found it really intriguing. I really liked her description of the papayas and all the little things that were happening around her in this book. It follows a young girl named Ha. I guess that's how you say it, Ha. I know in the book she explains how to say the name and how kids used to make fun of her by laughing, ha ha ha, because they didn't like her name. But it's set during the Vietnam War, and it actually has a lot of things that happened to the author in it, but not everything that's in the book actually happened to the author. It's really hard to explain. I really enjoyed it, even though it was written in verse. I really enjoyed it, and I believe I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. This is The Green Book by Jill Patton Walsh, and this is a very tiny book, like really tiny. I didn't expect it to be so small whenever I first received it, but I actually thoroughly enjoyed this book. This follows a young girl named Patty and her family as they embark with a whole ship full of people to a new planet because Earth, I don't know if it's being destroyed or some like natural disaster. They never say what's going on, but they have to leave the planet immediately, and they are the last ship that is leaving the planet. And it tells about they arrive at their destination, the new planet, and they are the only settlers that are going to that new planet. And it describes the events that happen to them while they're there. And something that I found really interesting in this book is that they were very specific on what they were allowed to bring with them. And one of the things was they were only allowed to bring one book with them. And Patty's book that she brings is a green book, which is why it's called The Green Book. And I think I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I found it really, really interesting and really fun, but there was a lot of things that could have possibly been explained a little better or just didn't really make much sense. One of the things, they bring rabbits with them on the ship, and on the new planet the grass is pretty much inedible, but they try to coax the rabbits into eating the grass. Like, I think they're supposed to have like a scientist with them, and they coax all the rabbits to eat the grass, which with like scientific experiments and stuff like that, usually you have like a test subject and just have like one, but they did it with all the rabbits, which was really weird. That's just something that I found to be kind of strange. That's all I really have to say without being too spoilery. I know the rabbit part is a little spoilery, and I'm sorry if that disappoints anybody. This is Marked, the first book in the House of Night series by PC Cast and Kristen Cast. And I enjoyed this book. It's about vampires, and in this book you don't become a vampire by being bitten or even sharing blood or anything like that. You just kind of become a vampire. And whenever they find out that somebody is going to become a vampire, they are marked, which is why the title of the book is Marked. It's something that happens when you're a teenager, so they have a special school that the teenagers go to after they've been marked for them to learn about vampires and the society and everything like that. So this follows a girl named Zoe who gets marked and she has to go to this new vampire school called the House of Night. Even though I enjoyed this book, there were several things that I did not enjoy about this book. One thing is that, sorry to be kind of graphic, the book is kind of graphic. They mention a lot of bodily functions. They mention diarrhea twice, and they mention pooping in general like 5 times. That's kind of disturbing. I didn't really care for that. Also, apparently in Vampire Society, the women vampires are held in a much higher regard than the male vampires, so it's kind of sexist too. But, I did enjoy it. I am currently reading the second book, but I'm not really getting into it as much as the first book. The way the first book ended, it could have actually pretty much been a standalone. So, there's a lot of books in the series, so I'm kind of interested in keeping reading and seeing how they keep carrying the story on. But with how they ended this book, it could have pretty much been a standalone. And I don't remember if I rated it 3 or 4 stars. I don't know. It's on my Goodreads, and I wrote a review on Goodreads as well for this. This review is on The Duff, or The Designated Ugly Fat Friend by Cody Keplinger. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was a really fast read. It took about 2 days to read. It follows a girl named Bianca, or B. She finds out that she is a Duff, or a Designated Ugly Fat Friend. And how does she find this out? Well, there's a guy named Wesley who's pretty much a womanizer, and he calls her a Duff and asks for her to give him information on her 2 friends. And turns out she doesn't like being called a Duff. I don't think anybody would. But it just makes her hate Wesley even more than when she just thought that he was a womanizing pig. But there's some things that's happening in her life, and she ends up getting into a relationship with Wesley. Then she ends up finding out that she actually likes him. And none of that's spoilers, that's all on the back of the book. Now, I have gotten to see the movie. The movie compared to the book, I don't like the way that the movie took with the story, which I kind of understand why they had to, because a kind of friends with benefits relationship probably wouldn't go over too well with parents allowing their teenagers to watch the movie, which the movie was geared towards teenagers. But I thought they could have done it a little better than pretty much doing a she's all that twist on it, which I didn't like. I thought they could have actually showed the relationship in the movie, but not like the sexual aspects that they portray in the book. But they didn't do that. They did a she's all that twist, but without the guy pretending that he wants to be with the girl. He's just helping her to become more attractive to other guys. And I'm sorry this turned into a book to movie comparison, but the book compared to the movie, I really enjoyed the book a lot more. They took out a lot of the relationships in the movie that they had in the book. The book has so much better relationships. So if you've actually seen the movie and you didn't care for the movie, check out the book, because the book is so much better. It has a totally different storyline. It still does the Duff. It still has the Duff, but it's a totally different storyline than the movie. So if you've seen the movie and you haven't read the book, definitely check out the book, because I really enjoyed the book, but the movie was just kind of meh to me. Flipped by Wendelin Van Draaien, and I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I really enjoyed it. It goes back and forth between a boy named Bryce and a girl named Juliana, or Julie, and each chapter is a different perspective. which I found kind of interesting because whenever it flips from Bryce's perspective to Julie's perspective, sometimes what they say happens a little differently from one to the other, which is really neat. But it follows them from 2nd grade all the way up through 8th grade, I think, yeah, 8th grade. And I thought the book was going really good, and then all of a sudden the ending happened, and I didn't really care for the ending very much, so I only gave it 4 out of 5 stars. But I thought the rest of the book was really good. I just didn't really care for the way it ended. I don't really want to say much about it, but from the synopsis, it is about a girl named Julie who meets a boy named Bryce. And when she first meets him, she falls madly in love with him. And he can't do enough to stay away from her. And then 8th grade hits, and she wants absolutely nothing to do with him. He's just doing whatever he can to be with her. So, it's flipped. And it was a really good book. I think it's really good for younger teens, or maybe even middle teens. But again, like I said, I didn't really care for the ending. I ended up getting this used, so I wasn't too torn up about the ending being horrible. But if you're somebody who can look over the fact that an ending is not really an ending, then check out this book. It was pretty good. But if you're one of the all or nothing kind of people who just either loves a book or hates a book, then this book probably wouldn't be for you. This book review is on Up Close, Elvis Presley by Wilborn Hampton. And I do not have the book with me because I already gave it to a friend at work. It's pretty much Elvis's story from when he was little all the way through his death. So it was really cool. It was really interesting. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I liked how the author wasn't like, oh my god, Elvis Presley, oh my god. So he wasn't like overly fanning, but on the other side, he also wasn't overly criticizing either. So it was a very, very unbiased book, which was really nice. Because some books are either like, Elvis is a god, he's the king of rock and roll, and others are kind of on the other side because Elvis had a lot of people who were very against his music, very against just him in general and how he affected the teenagers of that age. And I really liked that this author didn't pick a side on that. It wasn't like Elvis is the king and he wasn't like he was a really bad influence. He was very right down the middle, very straightforward, and told a very good story about Elvis. So I really enjoyed this book. Betrayed, the second book in the House of Night series by PC Cast and Kristen Cast. And I liked this book a lot better than I liked Marked, the first book. In the first book, there was a lot of like bowel movements and stuff. And I don't want to read about bodily functions like that. And this one is a lot darker actually than the first one. There's a lot more, I mean, it's a book about vampires. There's a lot more blood. There's a huge controversy going on. And it was just a lot more interesting. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars because I thought that it could have been better, but I really did enjoy this book. I'm actually excited to continue on with the rest of the series. And that is it for my April wrap-up. If you prefer that I keep my reviews separate from my wrap-up, let me know. Otherwise, I think I'm going to keep putting my reviews in my wrap-up so you can find out exactly what I thought of each of the books. I read 8 books this month, and I don't have one of them pictured here, but I think I did pretty good. And that's all I have for this video. I'll see you next time. Bye!